I can still hear the clink of glasses and the soft hum of the bar heater the night he told me I was a joke. We were crammed into a high top by the window, rain painting streaks down the glass like someone was trying to wipe the night away. Liam leaned back in his chair, sleeves rolled to his elbows, the picture of casual superiority. He'd ordered whiskey neat, because ice, like compromise, was for amateurs. I'd brought a notebook because ideas didn't care if you were on a date. Another app pitch? He smirked, eyeing the sketches I'd made on napkins, wireframes, flows, a name circled twice. Mara, you don't need dreams. You need a salary. It's not a pitch, I said evenly. It's a product. The prototypes work. I've got 3 beta users and a waitlist of. He waved a hand, slicing my sentence in half. You have optimism. That's not the same thing. The waiter set 2 drinks down. Liam lifted his glass like he was making a toast to the version of me he hoped I'd accept. Quieter, smaller, grateful. Here's the thing, he said, voice warm, words cold. You're not a founder. You're nice. You care too much. Investors don't buy nice. They buy winners. Do yourself a favor and find a stable job. I swallowed hard. You think I can't win? I think you won't, he said, smiling with his eyes, not his mouth. You don't have the stomach for it. You take things personally. The laugh that slipped out of him was soft, almost kind. That made it worse. Look, you're smart. But you're not. He searched for the word, found it like a blade. Inevitable. Something tightened in my chest. I slid the notebook back into my bag. I didn't ask to be inevitable, I said. Just underestimated. He grinned, like that proved his point. Exactly. We broke up a week later, gently, like you push a boat off a dock and pretend it won't drift. He said I'd thank him one day. I said nothing, because words felt smaller than the promise I had just made to myself. I would build the thing he could not imagine. The first night alone in my studio, I took everything he'd ever criticized, my softness, my care, my not inevitableness, and poured it into work. I stayed up until the city went quiet, then stayed up longer. I mapped flows. I coded until the cursor blurred. I ate noodles over a laptop fan that sounded like wind through a broken window. When the app crashed at 3:12 a.m., I didn't cry. I wrote a bug report and fixed it. When a beta user sent a paragraph-long rant, I thanked her and redesigned the onboarding. When my bank balance dipped under dignity, I sold my dining table and stood coding at the kitchen counter. On my wall, I taped a single page ripped from my old notebook, the letters inked so hard the pen had almost torn through. Build until the laugh dies. The city kept moving without me. Birthdays, brunches, friends' engagements lit up my phone while push notifications from my server logs burned brighter. I miss things and let them miss me back. Every, sorry, can't tonight, bought me one more feature, one more fix, one more inch toward something that didn't exist last month and suddenly did. The first tiny win came on a Tuesday that smelled like rain and burnt coffee. A micro-influencer posted a 30-second screen recording of my app with the caption, "This just saved me 2 hours." Downloads jumped. The waitlist doubled. My inbox went from quiet to alive. Then a product manager from a mid-size company emailed, "Could we talk about a team plan?" A journalist DM'd, "Quick interview for a productivity roundup?" A founder friend texted, "Whatever you're doing, don't stop." That night, I opened a new bank account and called it a Ward's Dress Fund as a joke to myself, a private prophecy. I transferred $20 into it and laughed alone in the kitchen, half from hope, half from hunger. When exhaustion tried to bargain, I played Liam's greatest hits in my head. You won't. You don't have the stomach. You're not inevitable. Each line was a rep at a gym no one else could see. 3 months in, I pushed the first real release. It was still imperfect, like me, like everyone I was building for, but it worked. It didn't promise to make people superhuman. It promised to hand them back the 15 minutes a meeting steals, the 30 seconds a tab switch taxes, the tiny frictions that, when removed, feel like a miracle. The morning after launch, I walked past the bar where he'd laughed. The window was clean now. The heater was off. Inside, a couple argued gently, as if trying not to break the air. I kept walking. By sunset, we'd crossed 10,000 users. By midnight, a VC I'd never met sent a calendar link. By morning, my server cried and I learned how to scale it. On the 7th day, the only one I let myself count, I bought a new dress. Not expensive. Not flashy. Just the kind you put on when you know the road ahead is long and you're going to meet it standing. I stood in front of the mirror, hair pinned, eyes steady, and took a photo I didn't post. I sent it to no one. I saved it for later, for a night with lights, and a stage, and a name pronounced into a microphone. Because this wasn't about proving him wrong anymore. It was about becoming the kind of woman who never needed him to be wrong in the first place. And one day, when the invitation went out, thick paper, embossed letters, a seat reserved under the chandeliers, I already knew the guest I would address last. Liam, I would write, you once said I wasn't inevitable. You were right. I chose to be. Success, at first, doesn't look like fireworks. It looks like unpaid invoices, cold coffee, and the quiet defiance of someone who refuses to quit. 6 months after that night at the bar, I was running on caffeine and sheer willpower. My app, Focus Frame, had 18,000 active users, and the feedback was flooding in faster than I could manage. I was the CEO, designer, customer support, and janitor all at once. My apartment looked like a war zone, post-it notes on every wall, pizza boxes under my desk, and a bed I rarely used. But one night, an email changed everything. Subject: Partnership Opportunity, Lumasoft Inc. I froze. Lumasoft was one of the biggest names in the industry, the kind of company I used to dream of interning for. And now they wanted to collaborate. The next morning, I walked into their downtown office. Glass walls, white floors, and a lobby that smelled like new money. The receptionist smiled. You're here for the partnership meeting? Yes, I said, trying to sound calm while my heart pounded. Inside the conference room, 3 executives waited. Their head of innovation, a sharp woman named Claire, leaned forward. We've been following your growth, she said. Focus Frame is doing something no one else has done, human-centered productivity. You make tech feel personal. I blinked. That's exactly what I wanted it to do. She smiled. We'd like to integrate it into our platform. Joint branding. You'll maintain creative control. For the first time in months, I didn't have to hold back a smile. Let's talk terms. By the time I walked out of that building, the rain had stopped. The streets glowed with wet reflections, and for the first time, I felt like I was walking on my own weather. That partnership changed everything. Within 3 months, Focus Frame was on 500,000 devices. Investors called. Magazines asked for interviews. Podcasts invited me to talk about grit, vision, female leadership. But what they didn't see were the nights I still sat awake, fixing bugs, battling self-doubt, whispering to the dark, you're still not enough. Every time that voice came, I heard his laughter. Liam's. The way he leaned back, the way he said I was too soft, too idealistic. And then I'd open my laptop and keep going, because that laugh was fuel now. One evening, after a long day of meetings, I got a call from an unknown number. Hey, said a familiar voice, awkwardly confident. My breath caught. Liam? He chuckled softly. Yeah. I saw your name in Business Weekly. Congratulations. You really made it. Silence. The kind that holds years between words. Thank you, I said finally. He cleared his throat. Listen, I was wondering if we could catch up sometime. I've been thinking a lot lately. I almost laughed. Now he wanted to talk? Maybe, I said. I'm busy this week. I'll text you. I didn't. Because the truth was, I didn't want revenge. Not yet. I wanted distance. I wanted growth. Over the next year, I learned what power really felt like. Not the loud kind, but the steady kind. The kind that sits quietly in meetings, knowing you belong there. I moved into a real office. I hired a team, engineers, marketers, dreamers. Every morning, I brought coffee for them myself. We're not building an app, I'd tell them. We're building proof. They didn't know what I meant, but I did. Proof that you can be doubted and still rise. Proof that soft doesn't mean weak. Proof that even when someone tries to shrink you, you can expand beyond their imagination. Then came the nomination. You've been shortlisted for the National Tech Visionary Award, my assistant said, barely containing her excitement. For a second, I couldn't breathe. That was the award, the one for innovators under 35, the one that meant you didn't just build a product, you built a future. That night, I went home, poured a glass of wine, and opened the awards dress fund account I'd created as a joke. It wasn't $20 anymore. It was enough for a dream gown and a front row seat. But what I did next wasn't about vanity. It was about closure. I opened my contact list, scrolled past names I hadn't seen in years, and stopped at one. The night of the award ceremony arrived like a storm I'd been waiting my whole life to meet. Gold lights poured over the hotel's marble lobby, cameras flashed like fireworks, and the air buzzed with the hum of ambition. The kind of night where everyone wore confidence like armor. I stood in front of the mirror backstage, hands steady over the fabric of my deep navy gown. My reflection didn't look like the girl who once sat across from Liam, holding back tears over a whiskey glass. This woman was sculpted by rejection, refined by persistence, and lit by purpose. "Mara, you're on in 10, my assistant called. I nodded, slipping the award badge around my wrist. Nominee, Visionary of the Year. The sound of applause echoed through the doors. Someone had just finished their speech. And then I saw him. Liam. Standing near the back of the ballroom, talking to a group of executives. Older, a little heavier, dressed too sharply for comfort. His smile was the same, smooth, polished, but now, nervous around the edges. For a moment, the room blurred. I remembered the bar, the laugh, the words that had followed me through every sleepless night. You're not inevitable. And now, there he was, standing in my world. When our eyes met, he froze. Recognition flashed, then disbelief. His mouth moved, forming my name, but I was already walking toward the stage. The host's voice boomed across the room. And this year's National Tech Visionary Award goes to Mara Ellis, founder of Focus Frame. The world exploded into applause. Spotlights swung. Cameras turned. Every step I took to that stage felt like justice being paid in slow motion. I stood at the podium, the trophy heavy in my hands. For a moment, I just listened. The clapping, the cheers, the sound of something I had built filling the air. Then I leaned into the microphone. My voice came out calm, steady, and sharp enough to cut glass. When I started this company, I said, I was told I cared too much. That I wasn't tough enough. That I didn't have the stomach for the grind. Someone even told me I wasn't inevitable. A quiet laugh rippled through the crowd, unaware of the story behind the line. I smiled faintly. Maybe they were right. Because inevitability isn't born, it's built. Brick by brick, late night by late night, mistake by mistake. Camera flashes flickered. I could feel Liam watching me. I stand here tonight not because I never failed, I continued, but because I refused to let failure write my ending. Applause rose again, stronger this time. And if anyone here has ever been told they're too emotional, too soft, too unrealistic. I paused, locking eyes with the back of the room, right where he stood. Remember this, being underestimated is just free fuel. The crowd roared. When the ceremony ended, people lined up to congratulate me. Investors, CEOs, reporters. My assistant whispered, "He's here. Do you want me to send him away?" I shook my head. No. Let him stay. A few minutes later, I felt a familiar voice behind me. You really did it, Liam said quietly. I almost didn't believe it until I saw you up there. I turned, meeting his eyes. That makes two of us. He gave a nervous chuckle. You look incredible. The whole night, people have been talking about you. I know, I said simply. He hesitated. I was wrong, Maura. About you. About everything. For a moment, I studied him. The man who once laughed at my dreams now standing small in a room built from them. Liam, I said softly, you weren't wrong. You were necessary. He blinked. Necessary? You gave me the silence I needed to hear my own voice, I said. The doubt I needed to build proof. The rejection I needed to learn self-worth. He swallowed, searching for words. I didn't mean to. I know, I cut in. But you did. He nodded, defeated. So what now? Do we start over? I smiled, not cruelly, just honestly. I already did. That night, as I left the ballroom, photographers' flashes followed me out into the cold city air. The rain had started again, quiet, rhythmic, familiar. I looked up at the glowing billboards, one of them playing a clip from my acceptance speech. My name lit up against the skyline. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the rain touch my face. It didn't feel like a reminder of the past anymore. It felt like applause from the sky itself. Because sometimes, success isn't the noise you make, it's the silence you leave behind when the person who doubted you finally realizes you didn't need them to believe. The morning after the ceremony, the world felt different, louder, brighter, and yet, calm inside me. My phone buzzed non-stop. Mentions, messages, headlines. Meet Maura Ellis, the woman redefining human-centered innovation. From rejection to recognition, how one founder built success out of doubt. Every outlet wanted a quote. Every journalist wanted my secret. But I didn't wake up feeling victorious. I woke up remembering how it all started, with a laugh across a dimly lit bar, and a sentence that once crushed me. You're not inevitable. That voice had lived rent-free in my head for years. But now, when I replayed it, it didn't sting anymore. It sounded small. By noon, I was in a studio downtown for an exclusive interview with Global Business Today. The producer adjusted my mic and whispered, "We'll start with your backstory, then the award, then your message to aspiring entrepreneurs." Got it, I said, smiling. The camera light blinked red. The host, a well-known anchor with a rehearsed warmth, began. Maura, your story has inspired thousands. But I want to start with something personal. I read that your journey began after someone doubted you deeply. Is that true? I exhaled slowly, keeping my smile measured. Yes. Someone I cared about once told me I wasn't built for success. That I didn't have the right kind of edge. That I was too emotional. The host leaned forward. And what did that do to you? It woke me up, I said simply. Sometimes pain gives you direction. Sometimes doubt becomes discipline. You can let it define you, or you can make it fuel you. The host smiled. So you turned pain into purpose. Exactly, I said. And now, every time I walk into a room, I remember, I didn't have to become someone else to win. I just had to stop apologizing for who I was. The studio went quiet for a second, the kind of silence that happens when truth hits the air. The host finally said, "That might be the most powerful line we've heard this season." Later that evening, the segment aired. My inbox filled again, not just from business leaders and journalists, but from strangers. Messages like, "Your story made me cry. My ex said the same thing to me last year. Thank you for proving we can rise. I was going to quit my startup. Not anymore." Every message felt like a heartbeat in the distance, echoes of people who were once told they weren't enough. And somewhere, in the sea of notifications, one name appeared. Liam. Saw your interview. You were incredible. I mean it. I'm proud of you. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. Or pity. Just closure. I didn't reply. Because when you outgrow someone's definition of you, their words no longer need an answer. A week later, Focus Frames board approved our global expansion. I sat in the corner office, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows that caught every shade of sunset, and watched my team celebrating in the conference room. Laughter, clinking glasses, plans for tomorrow. Ethan, my head of operations, leaned in the doorway. "So boss," he said, grinning. "What's next? Another award?" I smiled. "No. Something better." He raised an eyebrow. "What's that?" "Peace." That weekend, I attended a charity gala. The same one Liam's company sponsored every year. When I walked in, heads turned. Not because of the gown, but because of the calm that came with it. Halfway through the night, I saw him again, standing alone by the bar, drink in hand. He saw me too. For a second, our eyes met. He lifted his glass, a silent acknowledgement, not mockery this time, but respect. I nodded once, smiled, and turned away. And that was it. No confrontation. No clever remark. Just silence, the kind that says, "You were a chapter, not the book." When I got home that night, I placed the award on the shelf above my desk, right next to the first notebook I ever used, the one filled with sketches and coffee stains and self-doubt. I opened to the page that said, in messy ink, "Build until the laugh dies." I smiled. It had. Because the real revenge was never the trophy, never the applause, never the regret in his eyes. It was this, the peace of knowing that I didn't need to prove anything anymore. I had built a life where laughter couldn't touch me. And that, I realized, was the sweetest victory of all. 6 months passed after the ceremony. Focus Frame had grown from a startup into a movement. We weren't just helping people manage their time, we were helping them reclaim their confidence. Schools invited me to speak. Tech panels called me the voice of a new generation. Magazines labeled me the founder who proved emotion can lead. But for me, it was never about labels. It was about the moment I'd been building toward, not revenge, not validation, just the completion of a story that once began with humiliation. When I got the email from my old college, "We'd like to honor you with the Alumni Impact Award at the annual Founders Forum," I said yes immediately. Because that campus was where I'd met Liam. Where the dream started. Where the doubt began. The evening of the event, the auditorium was packed. Students, faculty, reporters, and familiar faces I hadn't seen in years. The dean smiled as he introduced me. "Tonight's guest reminds us that belief isn't given, it's built. Please welcome Maura Ellis." Applause thundered. I stepped onto the stage, in a black dress simple but sharp. The same room where I once gave a presentation and got laughed out of class now stood quiet, waiting for my words. I took a deep breath. When I was 21, I began, someone I loved told me I'd never make it. That my kindness would hold me back. That caring too much meant I didn't belong in business. Soft murmurs spread across the hall. "But I've learned something since then," I continued, voice firm. "Success isn't built by people who never fall, it's built by people who refuse to stay down. And caring too much? That's not a weakness. It's the fire that keeps you going when logic tells you to quit." The crowd leaned forward. Cameras clicked. "I used to think the opposite of doubt was confidence," I said, pausing. "But it isn't. The opposite of doubt is proof." Applause broke out. I smiled, not the smile of victory, but of peace. Then I looked toward the audience and saw him. Liam. He was standing near the back. No drink this time, no arrogance, no smirk. Just quiet recognition. And when our eyes met, I didn't see the man who broke me. I saw the man who unknowingly built me. After the event, people crowded around, students asking questions, reporters requesting quotes. When the room began to empty, Liam approached. "Maura," he said softly. "That was powerful." I nodded. "Thank you." He hesitated, searching for the right words. "You know, I used to think success was about being right," he said. "Now I think it's about surviving your own mistakes. You did that better than anyone." I smiled faintly. "We all learn in our own ways." He chuckled, shaking his head. "You always had a way of saying more by saying less." Then, after a pause, "I really am proud of you." For a moment, I saw the boy I used to love, before the ambition, before the pride. "Thank you, Liam," I said. You helped me find the version of myself who didn't need your approval. He gave a small nod. Guess I did. He extended his hand. I shook it, firmly, like equals. And that was the goodbye we'd both earned. That night, I walked alone through the old campus courtyard. The trees were taller now. The benches had new paint. But the air felt the same, full of dreams too big for the walls around them. I sat under the same lamppost where I once sketched my first idea for focus frame on a napkin. I opened my phone and looked at the home screen, the logo glowing faintly. I whispered, "We did it." Not I. Me, the version who was laughed at. The version who cried and kept coding. The version who believed when no one else did. The versions that carried me here. The next morning, I received hundreds of messages, students tagging quotes from my speech, business leaders reposting clips. But one message stood out. It was from a young woman who wrote, "My boyfriend told me I'd never make it. I almost believed him. Then I saw your story. Thank you for reminding me that sometimes the best revenge is becoming everything they said you couldn't be." I read it twice, then smiled. Because that was the real award, not the trophy on the shelf, not the applause, but knowing my story had become someone else's reason to keep going. That evening, as the sun dipped below the city skyline, I placed my college award next to the National Tech Visionary Trophy. Two sides of the same journey, doubt and proof. And as I looked out the window, watching the world I had once only dreamed of, I whispered the line that had carried me through everything.